Those of you who have joined us over at Patreon, thank you so much for your patience, but the wait is over. Brand new video just posted about an hour and a half ago, and I'll warn you, it is not for the faint of heart, but it does bring up an excellent question about morality, the church, the Bible, and whether it's objective or subjective. Now, I'm sure a lot of people are going to have some very strong opinions based on the topic, but one thing is for sure. I will defy anyone to find a North American preacher, pastor, or rabbi who will have a coherent answer for the question that I ask in this video over at Patreon. I don't think very many people, based on our modern perceptions, could have a very good answer. Because I've been thinking about it and reading and praying on it for months and months and months. And still, I'm not sure. But one thing is for sure, morality is a subjective term, and it has nothing to do with the God that we worship. That is the same yesterday, today, tomorrow. Psychological Operations 101. Divorce yourself from your own emotional chains for a minute, and you'll start to see things like this. That's what we do over Patreon. Join us. We would love to have you. It's only $1 per month, even less if you sign up for an entire year. And once again, if it's too much, if it's something that you just don't value, up to 90 days, watch the content, and then you can inbox me there. You can't really do that here at YouTube, but over there you can. And within 90 days, no questions asked refund. $3 right back at you. Not to give away too much for those who are paying over Patreon, but let me ask you another related question. What would you say if I told you that during the Middle Ages, the church could end your marriage against your will simply based on a medical condition? If one of these two people had a certain medical condition, the church could intervene, declare the marriage never having existed, and send them both on their way. Would that sound moral to you? Well, it did to them, because to them they were serving a higher morality. There was a higher goal to be achieved than just the happiness of these two people. See, later on, when we got rid of kings and churches controlling our everyday life, we handed that control over to a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. That stated we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, another question, would it make sense to grant somebody the right to life, but not the right to create life? I mean, shouldn't one have the ability, a right, to pursue progeny? I suppose you could put that under the idea of pursuit of happiness. It would, of course, then require another person to be involved in that with you, but would that be a joint and shared right at that point? And that to secure that right, it would be government's duty, having been instituted among men, having derived their powers from the consent of the governed, to make sure that that right was guarded, that nobody could take that right away from you. The ability to create life. It's an interesting question, because I'm sure a lot of people are out there saying, well, Florida Maquis, it's one thing to go through the biological process necessary to create a baby, but it is an entirely other thing for it to be a mother or a father. Father is the noblest title a man can be given. It is more than a biological role. It signifies a patriarch, a leader, an exemplar, a confidant, a teacher, a hero, a friend. But sometimes biology can be very strange. That a great man, a decent man, an honorable, hardworking man might have a biological issue that prevents him from procreating. Could have nothing to do with any choice he's made. Maybe he had an injury in his youth. Or it could just be genetics. Should we prevent men like that from being fathers, even though they're not biologically? Or should we promote men like that to be fathers? See, this is the contradiction. This is the contradiction. There's a couple articles I'll give you to read from medievalist.net and narratively, and I won't get into it, but there's a story many people have forgotten about, a man named Edwin Edwards, and I'll confess, I was one of them that did. I remember when this man went to jail for corruption, and I remember the story, but Jennifer, Veterans for Truth, Jennifer LaFontaine, reminded me of this morning. She sent me a message, pardon me for the break there. Having seen my video talking about people of different ages and age groups getting together and finding happiness and finding love, especially down here in Florida, the whole May-December relationships thing. This guy lived to be in his 90s, and in the last, I believe, 10 to 15 years of his life, after having served a term in prison for corruption, found an incredibly beautiful young woman, married her, and had a son. Now, to our ancient relatives, this would have been a sign of God's hand on this man's life. But when you read through everything that he went through, he did some things that were a little seedy, like most politicians do. But the primary topic, speaking of today's video, was yesterday's video. I've made this allegation that there are secrets about Lago that many people don't want to come out. I've shown the age differences, which really, a lot of people smile and they say, "Oh, that's great, that's wonderful," but it bothers them. It really does, and they always like to stick their noses in. This is, of course, President Trump. And now, to be very clear, the ages that are shown here versus the time this picture was taken are off by 1 year. This was 2019. I thought it was 2020. So Melania, 49, Donald Trump, 73, Brigitte Macron, 66, and the president of France, her husband, Emile Macron, 41. Now, this is yesterday at about 5 o'clock, maybe 4 o'clock. I dropped this video talking about this. Well, lo and behold, 10 hours ago, ex-Clinton aide implies President of France file found at Trump's home during Mar-a-Lago raid could be valuable to Putin as quote-unquote compromat. Now, how did I know? It had something to do with this. Because you have to know how these people think. Among the things that were found that they seized, search warrant has been opened. There were 11 classified documents. 11. One of those 11 was a file known as President of France. Now, coincidence? This picture? Not likely. Not likely. You see, it's not so far back in history that we would have to go, where if you saw a 67-year-old woman and a 42-year-old man, it would have been described as an alternative lifestyle. not just two people being married. See, marriage, the farther back you go in time, becomes more and more and more of a social duty. Therefore, the public has more of an interest in it. And when you get back into the 1700s and the 1600s, it was a privilege granted by the state and the church. So you had to step up and behave and act in certain ways. The marriage was not about you. And of course, public service is never about you. So where these people come from, what's going on here, has something to do with a different set of values from a different era. Most people would ask themselves, they'd be like, look, my marriage is about me and my spouse and what we want and what we think is the best for us. If we want to have kids, that's great. If we don't want to have kids, that's great. If we want to separate and then come back together, whatever we want to do, it's up to us. See, that's a very 21st century version of marriage, even late 20th. It was never meant to be that throughout the vast majority of history. Marriage was never about the two people. It was about a service to the community, a service to the church, the bringing forth of children, the marital duty to one another. And believe me, if you were given the privilege of marriage in the church and you didn't start popping out babies, they were going to start asking questions. And they did. Now, I'm sure a lot of people are like, well, they better not ask me. Well, ask yourself this question. Is 21st century North America the standard of morality? Or is 17th century England or France the standard of morality? Which one? See, this is questions we're going to have to ask ourselves. CNN has this as well. They've tried to bury it. Receipt of removed items. 1 set of top secret SCI documents, 4 sets of top secret documents, 3 sets of secret, 3 sets of confidential. The warrant receipt didn't detail what such classified documents were about. Among the items taken that were not those documents: a document about pardoning Roger Stone, a staunch Trump ally who was convicted in 2019 of lying to Congress during its probe of Russian meddling in the 2016 election. The Stone-related material taken from Mar-a-Lago was listed in the warrant receipt as Executive Grant of Clemency, R.E. Roger Jason Stone, Jr. And then just a bullet point that says, material about the President of France. You see, I lost my picture here. Hold on. Why would there be material about the President of France? And what would it have to do with if it wasn't related to this issue down in Mar-a-Lago that would probably involve Roger Stone? If you ever saw any of the pictures of Roger Stone at the gay pride parades, you could see that he would fit in real well with that crew down there. He's in a very open relationship himself, in a very crude way. His level of indiscretion is far beyond anything Monica Lewinsky ever did, beyond anything Melania Trump may have done, giving a smooch to Trudeau. We talked about this yesterday. He's beyond the pale, as are a lot of them. A lot of them down there. So I'm sure this probably is going to leak out that there might be some kind of that there might be some kind of embarrassing things that just have to do with this, the relationships of men and women, and who may know who in a way that you probably didn't know. But If you'd like a deeper dive into this, where we reveal what the reality is, join us at Patreon. I probably said too much, but there's a lot more to be revealed about this that a lot of people wouldn't believe. They wouldn't believe, for example, in order to maintain the status of a marriage, a court could order something akin to adultery. By our standards, it would be called adultery, but not by theirs. Now imagine the church ordering a violation of the Ten Commandments. They wouldn't have seen it as a violation of the Ten Commandments, but we would. So even a church from a Christian church, Protestant Christian church, even from a couple hundred years ago, would have said, no, that's not adultery. And the reason we're ordering it is because of this greater thing that we're trying to achieve to maintain the marriage, because we find the marriage to be something that's far more important to the church and the community as a whole. I'm sure a lot of people are scratching their heads. Trust me, I've got the proof. They don't like to talk about it because it really, the left, the liberals that control information, control history, or they're trying to rewrite history, speaking about this would completely rewrite their narrative on misogyny and how men were so evil. It wasn't the men. It was largely the women in the community with good intentions doing things that what we would call absolutely horrific and inappropriate and highly sinful and immoral by our 21st century standards, which probably confuses a lot of people, thinking by our standards we let everything go. Not this. Even today, not this. So anyway, I will leave it there. But Psychological Operations 101. Understand it or be a victim of it. God bless. Like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.